I was trying to think what I should do for this video, and then I realized that I'm a lot like this Subaru. There are a lot of other YouTubers out there that are more exciting, they do more adventurous things, crack jokes, have witty comments, and just have a lot more fun on their channel. And it shows they have a lot more views. But like this Subaru, I'm sort of boring. But that works for a segment of people. They just want something that's no fuss, gets the job done, and is exactly what they're looking for. Sure, you could go out and buy the sexier Mazda CX-5 or something a little bit more futuristic like the Toyota RAV4. But people who buy this car, they just don't care. Our spotlight is on this 2020 Subaru Outback Premier. Now, why do I say that this is the boring choice, much like me? Well, it hasn't changed a whole lot, and that works for Subaru buyers. In fact, Subaru buyers told the company that they didn't really want things to change because they loved the current Outback so much. So that's why it really does look a lot like a 2015, 2016, 2017. I mean, it just looks the same. And then even further back you go, kind of still has that same look to it. But Subaru has updated it slightly. It is based on the Legacy, the new Legacy that came out for 2020. It has some new interior tech, as well as all the exterior safety and tech that you would expect from a Subaru. So we're going to be going over absolutely everything you need to know about this compact crossover, and to see if this is the one to go for, or if you should be buying the Forester that we featured last year. Today we're looking at the Premier trim. Here in Canada, this is the top trim. However, they do offer the XT still for the Outback, which means you can get the slightly better engine with this. Ours is equipped with Subaru's 2.5-liter horizontally opposed 4-cylinder engine. It has 182 horsepower, 176 pound-feet of torque with their Lineartronic CVT. Has a fully independent 4-wheel suspension and comes with Subaru's X mode, which helps you in low traction situations. Not going to be able to test it out too much this week, unfortunately, but if you want to see a little bit more about X mode in deep snow, check out the video we did last year on the 2019 Subaru Forester, because this is similar to the Forester. I mean, it's just slightly different dimensions. The Forester is more of an SUV shape, so you squeeze it a little bit, the length is smaller, the height is taller, but essentially the features and all the tech is the same between this and the Forester, and the price is pretty similar too. If you go with the XT Premier, you're getting the 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder horizontally opposed engine, 260 horsepower, 277 pound-feet of torque, which is actually really good in this segment. And that was one of the complaints that people had about the Forester last year. I mean, everybody complained about the CVT, but they complained that you couldn't get more power out of it. So if you do want more power, this might be the way to go. I know the design's a little different. This is more off-road oriented with the look of it, the unpainted plastic cladding around the bottom of the car. But essentially, it's the same thing from the Forester. Now, our vehicle is tested at $40,995 Canadian. You go up to the XT, pretty much same kit there, but it costs $43,795. That's a $2,800 difference. The other major change with that is you get the high torque Lineartronic CVT, whereas this is just their normal output CVT. We have the cinnamon brown pearl paint, looks fantastic on this car. You have brown interior, only option for this vehicle. It comes with nappa leather on the inside. A couple of the features that you get on the outside, you have adaptive LED headlights with LED fog lights. You have wiper de-icers, a UV laminated windshield, auto power folding mirrors, a power liftgate, keyless entry, and then the full suite of EyeSight technology, including emergency forward braking, active cruise control, lane centering assist, lane departure warning, lane keep assist, and the reverse automatic braking with a rear camera. And you do have a front camera on this. It does work. The resolution on both cameras ain't too great, but it's kind of what you get with it. And you do have automatic high beams. The rest of the exterior updates for this vehicle are pretty small. Essentially, for the last generation, the Outback badging on the sides of the vehicle were at the bottom of the front doors. They've moved to the back doors, big change there. Rear end taillights are similar to what we saw on the Subaru Forester and Subaru Ascent. Aside from that, though, it's pretty much the same stuff. The shape is pretty similar, and I even posted on my Instagram story a couple days ago that I actually parked next to maybe a 2015. Couldn't tell you what the year was. And they do look pretty similar. But like I said, people who are buying this, which is Subaru's core market, they're really more interested in just retaining customers. They said that they really loved it. So why change something that's already working? The inside, as I mentioned, has nappa leather. It is a brown color, the only color available on this trim. You have 10-way driver power with 2 memory options, 8-way power for the passenger, front heated and ventilated seats with heated outboard rear seats. You have Subaru's 3.5-inch LCD gauge cluster computer. We've seen that on previous vehicles that they've had to offer, so it's pretty similar to that. Same with the steering wheel. It's kind of a carryover from what we've seen before, but the biggest change is the 11.6-inch tablet-style infotainment system. Uses a new UI with SiriusXM, Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto. This one comes with navigation and a 12-speaker, 576-watt Harman Kardon audio system with a CD player. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the infotainment, but they have changed things up a little bit with the tablet style. It's a different layout than was on previous versions, and I find it's a little complicated. People who don't like the lack of buttons where everything's going digital will not like this. You have to go through a lot of menus just to get things going. If you want to change songs, for example, you want to change the radio station, unless you've got it already programmed as a favorite and you're on the map, for example, you'd have to click the home button and then click the radio and then find what you want, click the home button to go back to the navigation. Also, one of the things that is new for this is a facial recognition system. Not only will it detect your profile, so you can set up a driver profile, it will automatically adjust your seating position, mirrors, and HVAC controls based on your preferences, but it also is there to make sure you're paying attention to the road. If you glance over to your phone, or maybe you're not quite paying attention, it will warn you pretty early. The thing about it, though, is you set up a profile to be able to log into your car every day. But it's different from the rest of the infotainment's profiles. There's a separate driver profile that really just seems to connect to a specific phone, and they're not really related. And even in the owner's manual, there's no information about this other driver profile. You'll see on our B-roll that I'm the driver when I sign in with the facial recognition, but then the not driver profile is just my phone, and that has nothing to do with anything. And when you go into the owner's manual to look for it, it just tells you how to set up this profile. It doesn't tell you really what it's for. So the infotainment might not be your cup of tea. I'm not a huge fan of it, and with the lower quality cameras, when you're backing up, you can't really see a whole lot with it, and half the screen's useless when you're using the camera, so there could be some work done for the infotainment system. Not a huge fan of it. A couple of other features that you get with this: you have dual zone automatic climate control, 4-door auto up and down windows. That's something that's really important to have. A lot of manufacturers either don't have the auto function for all the seats, but all 4 windows have it. You do have a sunroof, not a larger sunroof like you get on the Forester, and there's also HomeLink with the built-in compass for the mirror. So there's a lot of good stuff going on there. Again, pretty similar to what we've seen from other vehicles in Subaru's lineup. The infotainment system is the biggest update for 2020 and will probably be the point of contention for a lot of buyers who aren't into that sort of tech. But one of the complaints that we usually have about Subaru's vehicles is the interior just isn't very inviting. This one, I like it quite a bit more. You have leather surfacing throughout the center console area. The door cards have some soft touch materials, and I gotta say that it looks a lot more elegant, especially with the brown nappa leather interior. It's got a good look to it. So I do like the interior a lot more on this, and I gotta say that the exterior works. Even though it's not a whole lot different from the outgoing generation, it does work. And I have to say that I do like this more than the Forester. So now let's take this on a road test. We'll talk about how this vehicle performs and handles and everything you need to know about it. And then we will jump into an XT to see how that more powerful engine works as well, to go over absolutely everything you need to know about the 2020 Subaru Outback. I mentioned during our walk around that the Subaru Forester might be another vehicle to consider if you're in this size segment, especially if you like Subaru. It makes sense. I was really hoping to do a showdown comparing the two vehicles. It just didn't work out. Sometimes happens when we have vehicles and we try to line things up with dealerships. It doesn't go the way I planned. Now, I do have the specs for the two vehicles. Obviously can't read them off to you while I'm driving. That's pretty dangerous, but at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the important dimensions for both vehicles like we would normally do during an episode of Test Drive Showdown. I can tell you, though, the ground clearance between this and the Forester, it's the same. You're looking at the same power if you're getting the non-XT version of this Outback. So between the two of them, it's like I said on the outside, this is just a slightly longer, shorter version of the Forester, and the infotainment system here has been updated with this new driver attention system. So whether you like it or not will be kind of the determining factor, and also the form factor as well. Maybe you need a vehicle that's slightly shorter, but you're not as worried about the overall height. Forester might be the way to go. But I just feel that the people who are looking at either of these vehicles aren't necessarily going to be considering the other brands in this segment. They're going to be looking at Subaru, and it is interesting that they offer two pretty similar vehicles. But let's talk about the Outback and how it performs
on the road. I know 182 horsepower, 176 pound-feet of torque isn't a whole lot, but it's pretty average for what you get in the compact consumer segment for crossovers. So it's nothing bad. I mean, the CVT is kind of the thing that people will complain the most about, and you do feel it you're driving around. You do hear the engine quite a bit. The engine is loud, but it's a different sort of beast altogether. And if you really do want the power, you can go up to the XT, which we will be featuring directly after this driving segment, just to show you how it performs compared to this. But as a daily driver, this is really what you need. You don't need a whole lot of power if you're just going back and forth to school or work or doing errands around town. It's nice to have the power, but it's not really a need, which is why this is still the offered engine for this vehicle, and why I think most people will probably end up going for this. The enthusiasts just don't like CVTs, so they might not be going up to the XT regardless. But the engine works pretty well. You can hear it though, eh? Ooh, it's not full throttle, but you do hear it. Again, it's kind of similar to what you get in this segment, so it's nothing negative. But honestly, I do like this a lot more than some of the other Subarus that I've driven. We had great success with the Subaru Forester last year. We did some winter testing with it. I don't have any snow today to be able to test. It's been super dry this week, despite it being very cold. But we've got those Toyo Observe tires on here, some of my favorite tires to use. We've had excellent success with that. But overall, I mean, this car performs the way you would want it to. It hasn't changed a whole lot from the previous generation, and that's fine. That's why I say that for a certain segment of buyers, this is perfect, right? You already have an Outback, you still want an Outback, you just want it to be a little bit more updated. So that's a great plus for people who love Subaru. I still don't think they're going to necessarily attract new buyers, but maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below if you're in the market for an Outback and you've never owned a Subaru before. And now, through the magic of television, we're in the Subaru Outback XT. Now, this is not the Premier trim, so you'll see that the seats here are different. These are just regular leather seats. They've got some green stitching on it. The exterior of this car is different. It's green, and you don't quite get as much features. There's no navigation. There's no ventilated seats, no heated steering wheel, no power memory seats, just regular power seat for the driver. So there's a lot less going on here, but you get the engine. And that engine has 260 horsepower, 277 pound-feet of torque. A lot more power with this, almost 80 horsepower more. And I mean, if you're looking for a more sporty alternative and you still love Subaru, then this is the way to go. Because there really wasn't anything wrong with the 182 horsepower out of the regular Outback, but when you floor this one, oh yeah, it goes. Oh boy, what a big difference there. So not only does it have the bigger engine in terms of power, it's actually a smaller engine, 2.4 liter with the turbocharger. It also has the heavier duty linear-tronic CVT. So the CVT has a little bit more power out of it to be able to handle this amount of power coming out of the engine. But if you do need more power, you just like to go, maybe you're not as big of a fan of the environment and you don't care too much that you're going to be using more fuel, then this is an option for you. And I mean, you get everything. Obviously, this is not the same trim, but if you were to go with the Premier, you get all the same kit. It's essentially just the transmission and the engine that changed. So again, for about $2,800 Canadian, it's a pretty fair trade-off. I mean, there's not a lot of manufacturers in the consumer segment that offer multiple engines, Mazda being the first one that comes to mind because they do now have their 2.5 liter turbo on top of the naturally aspirated one. And something that consumers asked for. They said, I really like the CX-5, but I want more power. So Subaru is doing the same thing. They're making sure that their customers who want the Outback have a little bit of extra choice. So you can have more power. So it gives you a choice to go with this. You want less features necessarily, but pay the same amount of money, get more power, and you end up a happy camper. You know, it's good to be able to actually try out this one because it's not fully loaded. You still get the leather dashboard and, you know, some of the leather trim on the inside here. So the inside is actually still very nicely equipped, right? You just get more power, and in this case, less features. Seats are about as comfortable, but you do feel a difference with that nappa leather, especially with the leg extender for the driver. That's something, a big plus actually to go with over this. But I mean, it is the power, right? You floor it, you're able to go. Not bad at all. How did the 2020 Subaru Outback Premier handle itself during our week? It averaged 7.8 liters per 100 kilometers, or 30.2 US miles per gallon during our 100 kilometer test loop, and 9.1 liters per 100 kilometers, or 25.8 mpg during our 739 kilometer week. These were very similar numbers to the Forester Sport that we drove last year. How about likes and dislikes? Similar to what we experienced with the Forester, Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive system handles itself incredibly well in rough weather, though we didn't have any to show on camera this time around. The Outback's exterior design is also a plus for us. Despite remaining mostly unchanged from the previous generation, it seems to be a look that works for Subaru buyers. The optional XT engine is something commenters complained was lacking on the Forester episode that we did, so having the option on this gives buyers some choice if they really want or need more power. Finally, the interior trim and layout works really well on this Outback. The soft touch materials throughout are a plus, and it gives this vehicle an updated feel, although a lot of the parts are still carried over from the older generation. How about dislikes? Well, we're swapping the fuel economy from our dislikes list on the Forester with the auto stop-start system. While I appreciate that Subaru programs their system to wait a second or two before engaging, the startup process is rather rough. Whereas most auto stop-start systems seem to keep the engine in a ready mode, the Outback felt like it was cranking over on a cold start every time this system was engaged. We discussed some of the complaints we had about the infotainment in our walk-around, but I want to go over some of the other reasonings why we've added it to our dislike list. Aside from a couple heating buttons, Subaru has removed all physical controls and placed it within their infotainment system. In order to activate X mode, turn off traction control, or disable the auto stop-start system, drivers need to use the car button shortcut on the screen and select the appropriate option, taking their eyes off the road. Furthermore, there's no return or back button, meaning for you to get back to the navigation screen, you have to hit the home button first, then the navigation button. Overall, there's just too much dependence on the screen system without an adequate amount of research time put into the overall user friendliness. Finally, one of the other complaints we had about the Forester comes down to the obvious cost cuttings in certain areas, like the front map lights being LED, but the rear lights being incandescent, or the lack of nipples in the front cup holders to hold your drinks in place. Now, I'm sure some Subaru enthusiasts out there will argue that the front cup holders are specifically engineered to hold the Subaru branded coffee tumblers that all Subaru owners buy, but any size takeout cup is going to slosh around in the expansive buckets that are the front cup holders. Add the nipples, even 2 would be better than 0, if it really is just a cost-cutting issue. Aside from that, the Outback was an enjoyable car to drive. Sales data from Canada in 2019 show the Outback sold 3,000 units less over the Forester, but did see some increased traffic in December, which might suggest that this new generation is just what Outback owners were hoping for. Let me know in the comments below with your thoughts on this all-new Outback, and if it's a crossover that you'd consider if you aren't already a Subaru enthusiast.